because you look so short there. There we go. We are live.
We're live?
We're live.
Hannah, would you take
What's
this
wrong?
soda thing off?
Oh
of
yeah,
it
we got
and
we have trash on the balustrade and soda.
Just put that on the side, on the thing there.
Oh, okay.
I'm so pale today. Look at him white.
It's the lighting.
Oh.
So yeah. Hello. Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom.
shalom. Shabbat
And the piece of
shalom.
paper.
And the paper, Hannah.
Joshy,
Sorry,
those are your
I
things.
Those are his
forgot
things.
those.
And Shabbat shalom to you online. Thank you for joining us. As you can see, we are in our typical state of pre-Bible study chaos. So before we begin, of course, we want to pray.
No, Hannah, I'm not there. Just put on the chair in there. Okay.
So we will start in prayer, yes. So first things first, I guess it's you to pray because Hannah's busy moving jackets everywhere that they don't belong. So, okay.
Anyway. Lord Jesus, thank you for today and thank you for loving us. Thank you for being so faithful. I pray that you would minister to our hearts, help us to be able to rightly divide your word, help us to be able to come away from this Bible study knowing you better. And I just pray, God, that you'll have your way today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. Well, before we get into the Bible study, of course, which will be engaging and no doubt provoke some controversy, as it always does, we are in the 624th day of this war. Again, the longest war in Israel's history. And did anything happen this past week at all?
I stopped.
What didn't happen this week?
Can you fill us in on more? What didn't happen this week?
Well, Iran decided to attack Israel, so
Excuse me, point of order. Iran has been attacking Israel for decades.
no, I mean like
Through Hamas and the Houthis and Hezbollah and all that garbage.
no, I know, but I mean they're stepping up their game this week and just bomb blasting them.
I mean, why is Iran sending so many missiles into Israel?
because they hate Jews.
Well, yes,
And
but
Because Israel was trying to stop Iran from making
because
nuclear weapons.
Israel attacked Iran. There was a statement put out yesterday by the spokesman for the Israeli Defense Force, and he said, yes, we did a preemptive strike.
Good.
Yes, they're attacking us through the Houthis and the Hezbollah and all that. And they've been doing that. They've been funding that. And we know they're this close to getting a nuclear weapon. So instead of letting them develop that and then try to deal with the fallout of that, we did preemptively. We went in and we struck Iran.
Good.
And we wiped out their air force in 2 days.
Good.
Yeah.
Yes.
And of course, in response, they've been raining missiles down on Israel almost once or twice or 3 times daily since then. And at first, at the start of this war, it's really a continuing war, the missile, I mean, there'd be like 30, 40, 50, 100. Now there's 5.
Oh my, they're running out.
They're running out of missiles.
That's because they also got their weapon.
Yeah, because Israel's
weapons.
striking that. At the same time, of course, the Ayatollah, the religious leader of Iran, and if you know anything about the history of Iran and the revolution in the late 70s and all that, the Ayatollah said that from a bunker somewhere that he's appointing 3 people to take leadership. Why would he say that?
Because he's leaving the country.
He's that, or he's afraid he's going to die.
Yeah.
Or, yeah. So.
And the interesting thing is that the king, they had a king before that, right?
Before the revolution, yeah.
And
They had a Shah,
yeah,
who was a
a
king,
Shah,
essentially. Yeah.
And he said, "I'll come back, and we can become a democratic nation again." And
So his family went to exile, and some of them are here in the United States, and they were a democracy. So he was like, I mean, he was a king, yes, but he allowed the people to have, so like England type thing.
yeah.
He allowed the people to have a voice in the government, and it was a free country. And it wasn't perfect, but it was much better than the oppressive Islamic terror hole that it is now. So, are you okay?
Yeah, I thought something was on the wall, but it was on here.
Oh, okay. So this Shah has died, unfortunately, but his son, who is the next in line, has been releasing statements to the people of Iran for a week, saying, you know what? We can make this happen. This is our chance.
Yeah, Israel has opened up the door for
Israel's
you.
opened up the door. And really what Israel has done is fight the war nobody wanted to fight. Everybody in the world saw this coming. The nuclear weapon from Iran, the continued funding of terrorism, which people are like, oh, you shouldn't do that. They didn't do nothing about it. Israel's like, if we don't do something, they're going to wipe us off the map. So we have to do something.
And I think America has sent over warships and what did they send? And somebody told President Trump that he should slap the hand of Israel and tell them to stop attacking. And he says, "Why would I want to attack? Why would I want to stop someone that's winning?" So,
So it has been a very interesting week. Many late nights I've been up staring at the news and watching the live feeds, and we always get the alerts whenever the bombs are coming in. And thank God, considering the hundreds and hundreds that have rained on Israel, I think we've only lost 15 or 16 people. I could be wrong about that, maybe 20. Not a lot of people, thank God. It could be so much worse. It's terrible to lose anybody, but I'm so glad it's not as bad as it could have been.
And we sent over ships to help intercede with the missiles that the Iron Dome.
Yeah, so the Iron Dome has blocked about 95% of the missiles.
Yeah.
So that's 5% that are getting through still. But the United States recently has sent over technology to help intercept those 5% that are getting through.
Right.
So thank God for that. And thank God this didn't happen when Biden was in office.
Oh my, we'd be obliviated by now. Because he would do nothing. He would fund Iran.
No, he would fund Iran like he did before.
Yeah, like he has. Well, where do you think they got the money for all this stuff?
Obama.
Nuclear, Obama and
Remember
Biden.
the billions in cash he sent to Iran? And it's like,
And people are so upset. See,
here we go.
people are so against Israel fighting Iran, but they don't recognize the fact that if Iran or any Muslim nation, really, any nation that hates us and hates Jews, that gets nuclear weapons, who do they think they're going to use it against?
Goodbye Tel Aviv, goodbye to Eilat.
They're not.
And Iran has been posturing against the United States for decades, since the revolution.
They hate us. And who do you? I mean, once they eliminate Israel, who else? Who do you think they're going to come?
Where are they going to go next?
Yeah. And we're next. Americans are next. And so I don't understand the anti-Israel support in this. It doesn't make sense to me. It makes me frustrated because some of them are Christians. And it's like, wait a minute. No, if you are a Christian and you believe in the Bible, then you support Israel. I mean,
does that mean we'd have to support them politically?
No, just like we don't have to support our own government politically.
Fair.
But if God commands us to support Israel, to love Israel, to pray for Israel, and Israel plays a massive part in all of history, even future history,
Israel's
future
a fulcrum of
things.
history.
Yeah. So if God has not given up on Israel, we shouldn't give up on Israel. If God hasn't taken support away from Israel, yes, they need to be saved, but they also are blessed because people are getting saved. Jews are coming in, left and right.
250 Messianic congregations in Israel now.
Yeah,
it's a miracle.
So I mean, God hasn't taken away, and I've had a comment that I want to respond to, but I won't. I will, but I will do it respectfully. It's good. God hasn't taken away the blessing of Israel. He's given us a new covenant to which to work through. And people are responding to that. Jews are responding to that. Yeah. And that's Messiah. And he said it's no longer under you're no longer out to sacrifice. You have to come to me. And he's doing that. And people are getting saved and left and right. And Jewish people are getting saved left and right. So the blessing hasn't left. It's just transformed into a human being called Messiah, Jesus, right?
I agree.
So...
Yeah. So it's been very exciting. We've been hearing people screaming, World War III has begun and the Jews have started it. Have you heard that in the media this past? You've heard that, Joshua? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Chris Terry asks, are we Jewish?
Yeah, we're Jewish.
Or are we Jewish?
Yeah, we're Jewish.
I see, Chris, I don't know if you're Jewish. But yes. But my family and I are ethnically Jewish. I'm Ashkenazi on my mother's side and Sephardic on my father's, and you have Sephardic through your Sicilian.
For my dad's
the Crusoes,
side.
So, we are ethnically Jewish. Yeah.
And I think there's some on my mother's side, but I don't know if it's my grandfather or my grandmother.
Right.
I think it's my grandmother, but
yeah. So we are. And I'm grateful for that. And at the same time, sometimes I was like, it'd be easier just not to be Jewish. So yes, Anna.
Well, if we are Jewish, when did you start getting Jewish?
The day you were born.
Okay, so I mean that's actually a good question.
Yeah.
So Jewishness is not just a religion, right? It's also an ethnicity. There are ethnic markers. It's genetic.
Mhm.
So genetically, we are Jewish, and we've had this discussion before, right? Through your grandmother and your grandfather on my side, yeah, and a few lines on your mom's side.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
religious-wise, I was born again as a Christian in 1990, and when I found out that our family actually was ethnically Jewish, that was an interesting conversation with my grandmother. Then I was like, oh, what do we do with this? And I began to observe Messianic Judaism, meaning Jews who are ethnically Jewish who believe in Yeshua. So we learn Hebrew, which you guys have loved learning Hebrew. I'm looking at my sons right now. They
I
don't.
like Hebrew.
Well, thank you, Joshua. One of the three.
Once you get it, it's not so bad. It's trying to
It's
learn it.
getting over that hump, right? And we observe the holidays and the feasts and festivals, and we don't do those things because we have to. It's not a matter of eternity. Our eternity is in Yeshua and Jesus, the Messiah. We do those things because it's part of who we are as a people, right? And then, of course, I went to yeshiva and I became a rabbi and that whole thing. So your question, when did I start to being Jewish? The moment I was conceived. Yep.
I think there's so many, there's so much, like even Messiah himself wasn't fully Jewish. And so in today's world,
To qualify that statement, you mean ethnically,
Ethnic-
right? Genetically,
ethnically,
yeah.
through
Yeah, he had
bloodline.
Gentiles in his bloodline.
So a lot of times it's usually when people do get saved that they or are interested in their ancestry that they find out, because
Well,
most of us don't, like I didn't grow up.
I can tell I'm so grateful that God didn't show me that before I got saved, because I would have run off ahead of him and
Yeah.
become Orthodox.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
be living somewhere right now in New York in a borough.
A shtetl.
There are no shtetls in New York. but-
Yeah, it
Yeah.
would suck to live in New
Actually,
York.
you would hate it because there's so many rules that would be impinged upon you.
Not you raised with them. I'm used to it.
Now you still hate them, sir.
Chris Terry says, thanks, and did you receive a metzitza pape? What is
I'm not sure what you're saying, Joshua.
metzitza pape?
Metzitza?
Mhm.
Pape. I don't know what that is. Yeah. So since I didn't grow up ethnically Jewish, now I discovered our ethnicity after doing some investigation with my family and interviewing my very recalcitrant grandmother, who finally admitted it. I'm still learning, and it will be a lifetime of learning. So I'm not sure what a metzitza pape is. Yeah, I don't know.
Can you Google it?
I was bar mitzvahed. I was 24 when I got bar
Yeah,
mitzvahed
I
finally.
can-
Yeah. That was fun. I remember that.
I think everybody, well, you and I are bar mitzvah. Hannah's bar mitzvah.
Josh was studying for the bar
Josh is
mitzvah right now.
studying for his. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's good. We're getting there. So having said all that, there's so much going on, right? And I know we could spend the whole Bible study just discussing everything that's going on in Israel right now and with anti-Semitism around the world. Still, there was an anti-Semitic attack again in the United States yesterday. Does anybody know what happened in Ohio?
No, I didn't hear about that.
Okay, there was a federal congressman who was he was just driving along, doing his thing, and a doctor who was a Muslim pulled up behind him because they were going down the road together, and he started honking his horn. And
How did he know he was Jewish?
I guess he knew this guy somehow.
Oh.
And sort of doing unpolite gestures and screaming, and he passed him waving a little Hamas flag and yelling at this Jewish guy, and he ran him off the road.
Sure wasn't road rage.
No, it was
Oh,
it was a
okay.
hate crime. So the doctor, unfortunately, is in jail right now,
Good.
and I mean, fortunately, in as much as we want the justice, but unfortunately, that happened at all.
Yeah.
And I mean, Congressman Miller could have been killed, God forbid.
In
So,
America,
of
where
course.
they come over here to be free from
Who's they?
anyone, people come over
Oh.
here to get an escape, supposedly escape regimes like that. And yet
Yeah.
they're bringing it here
Yeah, well,
now. So
So, and that's
I'm glad
just
he's
a
in
little.
jail.
Yeah, me too. That's just a little taste of what's going on all around the world. And with this war in Iran starting and really picking up, the anti-Semitism has become even worse.
did the person get hurt?
Thank God, no. Miller
Oh.
was okay,
Oh, good.
but
Okay.
shaken, obviously.
I would imagine
Yeah.
so. I guess some legislation is going to come through right now.
Well, yeah. So it's weird right now. It's chaotic.
Yeah.
So we need a lot of prayer. We need a lot of prayer for Israel. We need a lot of prayer for the Jewish people. We need a lot of prayer for the Palestinians, quote unquote Palestinians, those who are still in the Gaza Strip. We need a lot of prayer for the people of Iran, that they would rise up and embrace freedom again and stand against the extraordinary, crippling injustice under which they've suffered since the late 1970s.
And the people, I mean, I think that the younger generations don't want it. That's why
Don't want what?
they don't want that regime that they
You
have
mean
now.
the young Iranians?
Yes,
Yeah,
and maybe even some of the older ones because they remember what it
of
was like.
course, of
And
course.
so I don't know. Sometimes, but, you see, without my daughter, I would, you kind
Oh, that
of
movie,
think
yeah.
that they wanted this, whatever. But like that, the schoolgirls who took off their thing, the hijab.
Yeah, so
hijab.
a video was leaked
Um,
out of Iran, and I say leaked because Iran, the government has shut down the internet on and off for the
Yeah.
past week. There's a video leaked of a bunch of Iranian schoolgirls
Mhm.
just taking off their hijabs and dancing and singing in the middle of their school, and nobody's stopping them.
No.
So that was
Hopefully they're still
remarkable. I
alive.
hope so.
I feel like the people of Iran want a revolution.
I think the younger
Um,
people probably
yeah.
do. Yeah.
Or I would say a counter revolution, because they had a revolution in the late 70s that ushered in this,
Democratic
Awful.
revolution.
And it's n-
demonic Islamic regime.
I think we should do what we did with Afghanistan until Biden messed it up. We should go in there and bring in that king, the prince. We should do what we did. Make sure that we're there for the
No.
exchange of power, though.
We should
You
give
know.
them democracy.
I mean,
We should. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what the
Yeah,
guy
he-
wants. That's what the guy
Yeah, but
wants.
he
He
still has
wants.
to be in power. I'm talking about the republic. not-
Well, but he's
give
a
them an
king.
option to
He-
choose, right?
No. This is
But his father is the one that was the good guy before the Ayatollah Khomeini or whatever his name was came in and just totally ruined everything. And so this guy at least wants, and he said himself, he wants to go back to where we could be a democracy. We can be people can have a say in
He
things.
seems
and-
like a pretty decent fellow. I've been following him
Yeah.
on YouTube.
They're always good kings.
Look at it.
Them
Look,
on.
he has videos. Look at his videos.
On that note, we're going to move on because we're already 17 minutes in.
Well, that's his
Um,
position.
There are still approximately 53 to 55 hostages still in the Gaza Strip. We don't want to forget those in the shadow of what's going on in Iran. Of those, approximately 20 are still alive, as far as we can ascertain. And please pray for all of them, but we're going to pray specifically for hostages every week now. And the hostage we'll be praying for this week, is Tamir Adar. Tamir Adar. He is a 38-year-old hostage taken from Nia Oz, which was a kibbutz near the Gaza Strip. Don't know if he's alive or dead, but he has family, as they all do. So please pray for the family of Tamir Adar, as well as Tamir herself. God willing, he's still alive.
He looks like he's not Jewish. He looks like he's
No, he's Jewish.
he looks like he's Arab.
Yeah, he's.
But they did take some
They
of their
took
own.
Arabs, they took
yeah,
Thai, yeah.
they took
So this is a
everybody.
picture of Tamir, young Tamir. He's 38. He looks old for 38, doesn't he? With a
Does
gray
look
in
a
his
little
beard.
old, yeah.
So please pray for him and his family, as well as all the hostages, and that God would bring peace quickly to this region of the world. Additionally, if you are following the weekly Parashiot, we are this week in Shalach Lecha. Shalach Lecha, which means sending to you or sending out. This is in Numbers chapter 13, verse 1 through chapter 15, verse 41. Remember, the Torah is broken up into sections. We go through the whole Torah in 1 year. This is this weekend's section for Shabbat. Numbers 13:1 to 15:41. Any last comments about things in Israel before we move into the Bible study?
No.
No, we're good?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh,
Yosef or Yehoshua, could you close those blinds opposite us? Because we are both bleached out. So thank you.
at least the middle one.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
the middle one
exactly.
last week was good.
That's a little better. Let's see. You're not albino anymore.
I'm not.
Skin-wise,
That's true.
Oh, okay. Last week we were discussing to whom the land belongs, right? And I mean, this is a big question. It shouldn't be, but it is. And we looked at multiple scriptures elucidating the land, the boundaries of the land God had given us, and to whom he had given it. And did we arrive at any conclusions just based on those Old Testament scriptures?
Well, it was God's. I mean, it's
It's
God's land, but
okay, what does that mean?
but he promised it to Abraham. He promised the land to Abraham, and he promised also to Jacob.
Excuse me.
Abraham, Isaac. Yeah, Abraham, that his descendants
So you're saying the land belonged to God and he can give it to whom he wishes.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
But he promised it to his sons or
I think
whatever.
also to Abraham.
Abraham.
Okay.
Uh-uh.
So he promised it to Abraham, yes. He also promised it to Isaac. He also promised it to Jacob.
Mhm.
He did not promise it to Ishmael.
Mm-mm.
Very important. He did not promise it to Esau, Jacob's brother, who sold his birthright for a bowl of porridge, essentially, or any of his descendants. So it's only to the descendants of Jacob, through his 12 sons, right? 12 tribes of Israel. Cool. Makes sense. Got it. So why is this such a big question? I mean, if it's that clear, why are we even talking about this?
Because that's the whole, well, the political spectrum says that this is what the scenario is in the political spectrum, that the Middle East want the land back from Israel because they say it's rightfully theirs. And Israel, but the UN at the 48 said, no, we're going to give them their land so they can have a place to live free. That's a political statement. But the spiritual statement is that the fight against Ishmael and Jacob is still continuing.
I mean, what fight? What do you
Isaac,
mean
I
this
mean.
fight between Ishmael and Isaac?
The spiritual aspect of it is the Arabs, not the Arabs, the Muslims are trying to eliminate the Jewish people. It's really not about the land at all. But we already know
wait,
that the
what?
land belongs to Israel.
What are you saying? It's not about the land?
No.
Wait, no. But we have been taught for 100 years that if we just had, a state for Palestinians, quote unquote, and a state for the Jews, that there'd be peace and harmony and rainbows and puppy dogs and happiness.
Well, you would think, but that is not. Israel wants that. I can't say Israel doesn't want that.
Okay, so you're
but-
putting a lot of stuff out here. So let's put on the
Yeah.
brakes here for a second. Let's break some of this down. How do you know Israel wants that? Do you have evidence that Israel wants a Palestinian state?
No, they don't want a Palestinian. They want to live in peace.
Oh, okay.
And the reason why I say that is because in 1948, when the UN, they all got together, everyone signed the accord and said Israel will have this plot of land. They said the people that were living in the land at the time wanted to leave, but Israel extended the arm, saying, you can stay, become an Israeli citizen. Just, you don't have to leave, and they ended up becoming refugees because nobody else in their own countries didn't want them back. So, but Israel extended that and has always extended it. They're always like.
So we got a lot going on here. So let's unpack all this. You should teach a college class on this because you obviously are very, very, very well versed. So Yosef shaking his head and said, no, you shouldn't teach a college class about this.
Why? I'd be one of those passionate teachers. That
She'd be very passionate.
We'll get kicked out so freaking fast. It'll actually be a world around.
Hey, let's try that.
I'm a college professor now, in addition to the other things I do, and you probably wouldn't be kicked out. But that one class you taught would be amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's boil this down here. What's going on? First of all, in the Tanakh, in the Old Testament, we have God's promise. Thank you so much, Joshua. We have God's promise that the land belongs to God, to Hashem, right? And then the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. And there's so many verses about this. And of course, right? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It all belongs to him. The stars, planets, nebula, the magnetars, which I just learned about this past week, are super cool stars. Gamma ray bursts, you name it, it's all his. He chose to give the land through promised covenant to Abraham, then Isaac, then Jacob, and Jacob's 12 sons, period. That land being from the Nile River to the Euphrates, including all of the modern Sinai Peninsula, a little bit of chunk of modern Egypt, and I wish I could show you the map, but I can't because our technology is not working yet. Going through modern state of Israel, Lebanon, most of Syria, over half of Jordan, if not all of it, up to parts of modern day Iraq, right? That's ours. All of that is ours by divine right.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the problem? If God has given this to us, why don't we have it?
He created it for us to have.
That's true. He did, Hannah. You are correct. But
I-
why don't we have it?
Because we handed it over out of our sin and our rebellion against the
Okay,
Lord.
so where in the Bible does it talk about losing the land and being kicked out of the land if we disobeyed the commandments of God?
Ooh, Deuteronomy?
Deuteronomy 28.
Deuteronomy 28.
Say again, Hannah?
Isn't that Joshua?
Deuteronomy chapter 28, very famous passage we've discussed before in multiple places in our Bible studies. And in this passage, it talks about the Israel following the laws of the Torah, right? The 613 laws of Torah. And he says, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's very long, very, very good chapter. And he says, God says, if you follow me, I will bless you. You'll be the head, not the tail. You'll be the first, not the last. Your land will prosper. You'll have rain. You'll have children. You'll have crops. Everything will be wonderful. I'll give you peace from your enemies. But if you disobey me, if you turn from my law, if you turn from my statutes and judgments, you'll be the last and not the first. You'll be the tail and not the head. You will lose your crops. You will lose your children. There will be drought in the land. Just FYI, there's been drought in Israel for over 20 years now, which is interesting. There will be, your enemies will come against you and they will destroy you and they will put a bit in your mouth and they will drag you away from the land that I've given you to a foreign land where you will hear a tongue with which you're not familiar and you will worship gods that neither you nor your fathers have known, and you will be dispersed among all nations. And if we continue as his people in our state of rebellion, unrepentant, he will destroy us and it will please him to destroy us. So that's a very sobering word, right? So this historically has been what has happened. So Israel, 70 AD, what happened?
Rome went in and just completely wiped out Jerusalem.
Yeah, and they destroyed our temple, right? I mean, we had barely finished this temple complex, and Rome comes in and wipes it out. And the Bible actually tells us why this happened. I'm going to offend a lot of people here. Why did this happen? And Yeshua himself prophesies about it in Luke 21 and Matthew 24, why this would happen.
Because they disobeyed the Lord.
Yeshua says because we did not know the time of our visitation.
All right.
What does that mean? We did not know the
We
time
didn't know
of
when the
visitation.
Messiah came.
We missed the Messiah. Now, not
We
all.
had one job.
He had one job, and he prophesied for centuries. And watch out, these are the signs. Hello, this is where he'll be born, how he'll live, how he'll die, how he'll rise again. So we missed the time of our visitation when Messiah, God himself in the flesh, walked among us. And not all of Israel missed Messiah, right? The first believers in Yeshua were all Jewish, right? Peter, Paul, Mary.
There was Nicodemus, and then there was the prophets, Anna and
Nicodemus and
Simeon.
Anna and Simeon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there were some Jews. And by Acts chapter 1, we see there were about 120 Jews out of the entire nation of Israel that did not miss him. But because the nation, generally speaking, missed him, and because the leadership missed him, Yeshua said the judgment of the destruction of our temple would come upon us. And approximately, 17 years later? No. Boy, that was bad math. 37 years later, it did. Exactly as he prophesied. And we lost everything, and we were scattered to the winds. That was called the galut, the dispersion, right? What happened then?
Then you had like the Maccabees and
Nope,
Then-
Maccabees are before.
the Messiah came.
No, this is,
Oh,
we're talking 70
after,
AD.
okay,
Yeah. So what happened after Rome destroyed our temple in 70 AD?
We scattered.
In order to answer these questions that we're postulating, we need to go through our history a little bit. So what happened?
We scattered.
abroad.
Okay, we scattered abroad, sure. And then what happened?
We were kind of assimilated with the nations we became part of.
Okay, yeah. And then what happened? Did we just like throw in the towel and say, "Pfft, we're out of here"? Nah, I don't think so.
I think that, a significant event in
I'm sorry?
There were always Jews in Israel.
Say that again.
There were always Jews in Israel, even during the diaspora.
Yeah, there have always been Jews in Israel, even after the Galut in 70 AD, right? When Rome came in and crucified over 1 million Jews and laid siege to Jerusalem, and it was just a horrible, horrible time. Some stayed still. It was like the illiterate farmer, just trying to raise turnips or something. But there was always a Jewish presence there, a little bit. And then a few decades after the fall of the temple in 70 AD, we had a man rise up, a Gentile, who said, "Hey, I want to be a Jew." And he studied and said, I'm Jewish now, essentially. His name was Rabbi Akiva. Have you guys heard of him?
Yeah.
And he led something called the Bar Kokhba
Oh, right.
revolt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bar Kokhba is Aramaic. It means what?
Bar sun.
Good.
Uh,
Kokhba is
Kufa, I don't know.
star.
Sun star.
Son of the star.
Oh, okay.
Because Akiva, this Gentile who wanted to be Jewish, said, this dude over here is the fulfillment of the prophecy of the coming Messiah in the book of Numbers, in the Torah, about the star rising out of Jacob. This is Bar Kokhba, this is that star, and he will lead us in victory against the Romans, yay. So we're going to have a revolt called the Bar Kokhba revolt, and everyone gather around and we'll kick the Romans out and we'll reclaim our city. How did that end up?
Well, the Messianic.
Roman legions walked in and just.
It
Well, no.
was a bloodbath. We lost
The
terribly.
Messianic Jews laid down their swords, so they wouldn't fight
Why
because
wouldn't the Messianic
well,
Jews
they
fight?
knew he wasn't the Messiah.
They weren't going to fight under the banner of a false Messiah.
Right. And so basically they just left, which caused animosity between the Jewish Orthodox and the Messianic Jews.
There was no real Jewish Orthodox at the time, but
Oh,
the
okay. But
religious Jews who followed Akiva and those who follow Yeshua,
Right.
right? They're not obviously compared. Yeshua's God.
but when they left, that probably left them very vulnerable, and then they got, they lost. So
It was a horrible murder. Murder is the wrong word. Massacre. Akiva himself was caught by the Romans, and he was tortured alive until he died. Yeah, a terrible, terrible thing. So, yeah, the false Messiah didn't work out. Go figure. And the
he's
revolt
still
didn't
in his
work out.
grave, huh?
And so the Romans, still in his grave. Yes, he is. He's still there. I know a rabbi who's not in
I
his grave
know there is
anymore.
one person in history that has.
Rabbi Hagadol Yeshua, the great Rabbi Yeshua. Yes, I think it is.
That one from New York, I think he was from there.
He was what? No, he didn't. They're still waiting for that though.
Oh, right.
So-
yeah.
So this is interesting. So after this, the Romans, they were like Gunuk. They essentially plowed Jerusalem to the ground, and they rebuild it, and they call it what?
Palestine.
No, the city of Jerusalem. Alina Capitolina, right? It's essentially the capital of our new little state that we're going to call Palestine. Now, why did the Romans choose the word Palestinia?
Because Philistine.
Because the Philistines. And why was that significant?
They were enemies.
Because the Philistines were the enemies of the Jews.
Mm.
So the assumption of the nomenclature Palestinia, which we now have as Palestine, was given by Rome, picking a name from our own history of our enemies. They were trying to be as offensive as possible, and they set up idols, and it was just a terrible thing. Even in all that, there were still a few Jews in the land. Some that,
I think they used to be there, right? The Philistines used to be in Israel.
well, yes, about modern day Gaza.
Gaza,
They weren't
yeah.
around Jerusalem. Yeah, and they were a fierce, seagoing people, very strong, but not very numerous.
They knew their history. They knew where the Philistines were.
Yeah, the Romans did their homework.
Well, it doesn't say that any evil people aren't smart. You have to have some brains to be evil.
Wait,
I
aren't
mean-
you descended from Italy and Sicily too?
Sicily, not Rome. Sicily.
She doesn't.
I'm just avowing that part.
Wait, aren't Sicilians and Italians the same thing?
No.
Oh, okay.
Don't say that.
Our
We're
pizza's
easy.
way
We're
better.
there, kneecaps.
Okay. I'm kidding. I'm very glad that you're part Sicilian.
Thank you.
She makes a killer lasagna, by the way. So
She did.
That's too easy.
we do lasagna again, yes. So this happened again. We're just doing a quick summary of our history. And then after that, after Rome renamed the area Palestinia, a few centuries went by, Rome rose, Rome fell. The Palestinian name stuck, right? Because nobody wanted Israel. And by Israel, it's not just a name for people, it's a name for the land. And then something happened in the 8th century. Can anybody tell me what happened in the 8th century?
The Muslim conquest.
Oh, this is the Quran, right? And in the 8th century, 7th and 8th century, a dude named Muhammad showed up in the deserts of Saudi Arabia and said, yo, follow me. There's only one God. And if you don't believe me, I'll prove it to you by slaughtering, killing, raping, and pillaging you. And that was the start of Islam. And I cannot emphasize enough how foolish and how violent the birth of Islam was. Muhammad supposedly talked to these spirits. One of them identified itself as Gabriel, but later on it identified itself as Satan. And Muhammad was still like, okay. And he wrote things down, even though he's supposedly a illiterate prophet. And those writings became the modern day Quran that we have. So did Muhammad, specifically the Muslims in general at this time, like the Jewish people? Because there were Jewish people scattered throughout Saudi Arabia and Palestine and parts of Europe.
I don't think so.
I think maybe Ewa did.
I think there's
I mean,
always been a
I
rumbling.
mean, he stole a
of,
lot from our Tanakh, right? From our
Yeah.
Old Testament and New Testament. But so there's not a whole lot of love there. At the beginning, he actually, if you have some time on your hands, read about the Battle of Khaybar. Battle of Khaybar, Khaybar. It was bad. It's when he slaughtered just thousands of Jews. But before that, he wanted to reach the Jews and believe that the Jewish people would rally behind him as the great prophet of Allah, right? And Allah is just an Arabic term meaning God. And the Jews did not. We're like, no, we have the Torah and we have the God of Abraham. We're good. Thanks. And Muhammad said, well, that's okay. Let's be friends.
Yeah. What kind of run is
Yeah.
that?
He raped, pillaged, murdered, and slaughtered thousands and thousands of Jewish people. And then he made us submit, right? And we had to pay a tax to be allowed to live.
What is that called?
Dhimmi?
A demi.
Yeah. So we had to pay this tax, and it just got worse and worse for us. And finally, they being the Muslim people, conquered Jerusalem, right?
Mm.
Which they called Jerusalem. And they claimed it as their own by what? I mean, Muhammad himself never went to Jerusalem. He never stepped foot in Jerusalem. But the hadiths and the history of Islam tell us that Muhammad had a dream one night. And in this dream, what happened in relation to Jerusalem? Do you remember?
Muhammad would descend. Didn't he come to the Temple Mount or something? And he like ascended or something. I forget.
According to the legend in the dream that Muhammad allegedly had, and again, this was told a century or two after his death, supposedly Muhammad dreamed that he flew to Jerusalem on a winged horse, essentially, and landed on the modern-day Temple Mount, and then ascended into heaven on a winged horse, and Allah called him up. Allah saying, oh, what a joy to have Muhammad. This is going to be a great visit. And he visited, and he met Jesus, and he talked to Allah. And because of that, Jerusalem became called Al-Quds in Arabic, which means the farthest mosque, or the farthest mosque that's reached of Islam. And though Muhammad never stepped foot in Jerusalem in real life, this legend caused the Muslims to lay claim to Jerusalem. This is Al-Quds. This is the fulfillment of prophecy. Muhammad had this dream-ish. And because of that, this is our city. So we have to defend it. So what happened then? We're about in the 10th century now.
Well, they took it over.
Yeah, they actually took it over, right? And it got ugly. Now, in the Quran, which is the holy book of the Muslim people, there is, there are a lot of interesting verses, but there's something in Surah 5:20 that I wanted to read to you. So it's okay if I read to you from the Quran, but you didn't expect this today.
Okay.
Let's get the Bible study so we can hear the Quran. Okay. So again, this is supposedly the words of Allah given to Muhammad through Gabriel, the angel. And in Surah 5, and Surah is the name of their chapters, right? In Surah 5, verse 20, it says, say again?
In 21.
Yep.
Yeah.
It says, and when Moses said to his people, oh, my people, remember Allah's favor to you, how he placed prophets among you, and he made you kings and gave you what he did not give to anyone among the worlds. Oh, my people, go into the Holy Land that Allah has ordained for you. Do not turn back, for then you will turn back. For then you will turn back as losers if you turn back. What does this verse mean?
Allah gave Palestine to the Jews.
What? According to Quran, Allah gave this land to the Jews? Doesn't it say, when Moses said to his people, oh, my people, remember Allah's favor to you?
And then another verse that says that it's our land until the end of the world.
So the Quran itself promises the land of Israel, the land of Jerusalem and those cities, to the Jewish people. So what's the problem?
Hate is
It's
the
not about
problem.
land.
And rebellion and sore losers.
Sore losers.
Well, it has to be hate. It's just pure hate. It's not about,
I mean, why would they hate us? I mean, we're pretty likable people.
because like a lot of people, we pick and choose, want to believe in our holy books, and then we live on that.
Hmm.
And I think from the studies we've done of the Quran, Muhammad, I guess that's the guy. What was his real name? Was his real name
Muhammad,
Muhammad?
yeah.
Oh, Muhammad was very like, what is that when you go up and then you go down and then you bipolar, I believe, because in some parties like Jews are our brother and we will live among, live side by side and we need them, and then the other times are like, well, let's kill them or enslave them or whatever, and then they'll be like, but we need them to go to heaven, and then the other time it's like, well, if we kill a Jew, then we get to go to heaven and they can bear our sin, and so
it actually says that too.
There's a lot of
that Jewish people bear the sin. So Christians too, by the way.
Yeah.
Christians and Jews bear the sin of Muslims.
Right.
Therefore, Muslims get to go to heaven and we get to go to hell because we carry their sin with us.
Right.
So we are their redemption.
We are their redemption.
You think they'd be nice to us?
You think so?
Right.
And so there's a lot of up and down in the book, and so I think that like the extremist people, they take the kill, enslave, convert thing very seriously, but they forget about, well, Allah gave the land to the Jews, so I think that's what it is they pick something. It's like, Gentiles taking the blessings of God and not the curses of God, so they're taking the part that excuses them, it allows them to kill instead of living with them in peace.
Okay.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. So obviously I'm trying to make it as efficient as possible. Going on this journey for history then, Palestinia and Al-Quds, Jerusalem, are taken by the Muslim hordes very violently, terrible things. And if they don't kill the Jews there, they at least, force them to be taxed and things of that nature. And very oppressive, and you can't own property. Sounds very familiar in Germany. And then, Benjamin, what happens in the 12th, 13th centuries?
12th, 14th centuries.
In Palestinia. Yeah, the Crusades. So an empire rises up, a Muslim empire, a caliphate, if you will, called the Ottoman Empire. And this is a loosely knit force of all these different tribes and expressions of Islam trying to conquer the Middle East and parts of Asia and Africa and Europe. And they get pretty far. They conquer parts of Spain. They get to the doors of Vienna in Austria. I mean, they were very violent and very powerful. And they do what to Palestinia? They conquer it and they suppress it. It's not like they went there and cultivated beautiful gardens and everything, right? They keep it dry, dusty, and poor. It's sort of like a punishment against the Jewish people. And then the Crusades happening. Can you tell us? This is an unfair question. Benjamin's our local Crusade history expert here. Can you tell us in 30 seconds what the Crusades were about?
I got facts about Rome, I got facts about Crusades, I got facts about American Revolution, I got all the facts.
Oh, you got everything.
Well,
So
the Crusades were started by Pope Leo.
Pope Leo.
It was started by, I think Pope Innocent or something like that. It was an older pope, and it was a call to reclaim the Holy Land because this was a time where, well, depending on who you read, it was a time when people were angsty to go to any war because this was a time when feudalism was big and they had a lot of soldiers doing nothing.
Yeah.
Or it depends on who you read. This was a time of great, very vigorous religious, where Christianity was, Catholicism was at its height, and people were like, they were so willing to experience Catholicism that they would, it's like, oh, you fight, you can go to heaven, you pay money, you go to heaven. This was like the height of old Catholicism. And then Pope Leo said, we have to retake the Holy Land, and if you retake the Holy Land, you go to heaven. So a lot of people, well, at first it was not knights or anything, it was people.
Just commoners, right, that joined this Crusade army.
Yeah, and even almost, 100,000 children?
That sounds
volunteer.
Jeez.
It's called the Children's Crusade, and it ended exactly how you think it would end. And the Commonwealth Crusade was very oppressive because they went in and tried to kill Jews and Gentiles and all that stuff, or Jews and Arabs and practicing Muslims and all that.
So they were fighting not just against the Arabs who had conquered this land, but against the Jews who still lived there.
Yeah. Now, I do have to give it to Pope Innocent or whoever was Pope during that. He did tell them not to kill Jews. I think he did let them kill Muslims, which is not good. But he did. He's like, oh, don't kill Jews.
And they didn't listen.
No, of course not. And then, of course, the First Crusade, which is the one with the knights and with the official holy, they came in, and the First Crusade actually walked. They captured.
So they captured Jerusalem. They reclaimed the land.
And they started the
What did they call the land when they recaptured it?
I think they called it Palestine.
Palestine. Yeah. So that
They
old
showed
Roman
Roman,
thing for
yeah.
1,000 years now had stuck. Why didn't they call it Israel?
I think because, well, Europe at the time was still very much Roman inspired. They wanted to be Rome again.
Well done. Yeah.
And they started the Kingdom of Jerusalem, which is actually a very interesting story because there was actually some thriving between Jews and Muslims and Christians at that time, but it didn't last.
Yeah. Never does.
And then, of course, they got recaptured by Muslims, I think like 100 or 120 years later or something like that. Kingdom of Jerusalem fell, and Jerusalem would be relatively Muslim controlled after the Crusades until like the
Till World
1800s.
War One.
Yeah, Britain would come in and have some control over it, and then
So this is interesting. So the Crusades, big mess, a lot of blood. Everybody died. Jews died. Arabs died. Catholics died. And there was this give and take back and forth. The Crusades take it, and then the Muslims come back and take it. And the Jews weren't fighting for anything. We just were trying to survive there. And
We just wanted to raise our turnips.
We did. And sell them.
Mhm.
And back and forth and back and forth. And finally the Muslims won, right? After a huge bloodbath. And the Horns of Hattan, I don't remember if you know that. Remember that in your readings, is where there was a massive battle on the edge of the Sea of Galilee. And thousands of crusaders died there. And the Muslims just slaughtered everybody. And you can still go there today. And it's a terrible, terrible thing. So the Muslims had it, and they held on to it then until the fall of the Ottoman Empire, World War I. And the land was still called Palestine. Stuck, right? And then World War I, the victors divide the spoils. And what happened to Palestine or that land?
Palestine was divided by Britain.
It was given to Britain. Okay, so they essentially, since they were one of the victors, took it over. Why?
Britain was always imperialist. They started out one of the greatest
It was
empires in the
always
world was Britain.
Well, I mean,
They
I guess
have-
that's true.
Well, I think Britain
Not
had.
so much today, but
I think.
No, they lost it all.
they can't even keep
That's
their
a
own
whole-
capital city. But
That's a World War II. We just don't.
I think
so,
Israel was a trophy because I think Britain always had
we are losing you. So,
Britain
there you go.
always had like a foot in the door of religious belief, kind of. And I think so. Israel's they're conquering Israel or getting Israel was kind of their trophy. Like they're now a piece of the Holy Land and the land that the Bible
Okay.
talks about.
Yeah. So this is interesting. So now we're looking at the 19th and 20th centuries, right? I don't know if you guys remember a guy who was not very famous called Mark Twain, who actually, I'm joking, who actually went to Israel in the 1800s, in the 19th century, and he wrote about it in his book called Innocents Abroad, where he travels the Mediterranean, different countries. And he wrote about the land of Palestine, which of course he calls Palestine then. And he said that Palestine is essentially abandoned. It is a dusty ruin. Very, very few people live there. The land is not cultivated. There are some hyper-impoverished Jews. There are some hyper-impoverished Arabs, and nobody wants to be there. Jerusalem is a wreck. There are no real major cities. Villages are abandoned along the side of the road and have been for centuries because under Ottoman rule, they didn't care about the land. They didn't take care of it at all. And Al-Quds that they made such a fuss about, they let it go.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't release it from their authority. They just didn't take care of it until finally the Brits came in. And the Brits, were they like, yay, let's give this land to the Jewish people?
Mm-hmm. They were like, keep it for ourselves.
Yes and no.
Oh.
Yes and no, which is interesting. So in the first part of the 20th century, they went in and they were like, oh, okay, we got it. We're conquerors. General Allenby walking into Jerusalem, all that stuff. Your history is fascinating. And then he's like, well, now what? And already there was contention between the Arabs and the Jews, mainly based not on who owns land, because the land was owned by the Ottomans and then by the Brits, but religion.
Mm-hmm.
The core of the contention was their faith, right? Again, the Muslims want to cause others to submit or die. That's defined in the Quran itself. I know I'm going to get some hate mail, but oh well. Read the Quran.
The facts
I mean,
right
it's
there,
right
written in
there.
black and
Yeah,
white.
So because of this, they would continually oppress the Jewish people, the small Jewish population that, again, had always been there since before the 1st century AD. And the Jews would fight back sometimes if they could, But the Brits got there and they're like, oh my gosh, we need to put an end to this fighting. This is terrible. So here's what they did. They said, okay, Jews, you need a safe place to live in this land where you've always been. It's your ancient homeland. So we're going to write up something called the Balfour Declaration. The Balfour Declaration, written by a man named Balfour. And we are going to give you this land as your nation. So congratulations. So the Jewish people were like, oh, finally, some relief. Yay, we're gonna live, we're gonna survive, we're gonna thrive, we're gonna take it back. In as much as we're going to be able to farm and then our families can thrive. That same British government said, okay, Jews, here's your little declaration, the Balfour Declaration, Mazel Tov.
Thank you.
When? We'll talk about it. Then they went over to the Arab population and they said, the Jews are a problem. They're always there. So here's what we're going to do. Here's money. Here are weapons. You defend yourselves because you Arabs have been here for centuries. And you know what? I mean, Jew. So they played both sides.
It sounds like Cotton Jew.
We play both sides. No matter what, we always come out on top.
Yeah, so that's what the Brits did. And it got so bad that there was actually a pogrom in the early 20th century in Jerusalem. And what happened is the Brits sat down with the Mufti of Jerusalem at the time and said, this is a problem, isn't it? Those Jews are a problem. So we're going to withdraw our troops. And, you can do what you need to do. And Britain did, and the Muslims did, and hundreds of Jewish people died. And the Jewish people cried out to the British government because the Brits were in control by this time after World War II, and they said, what's going on here? Balfour Declaration, all that stuff. And Britain was like, oh, this is terrible. Oh my, look what happened. Isn't this terrible? This is bad. Tea? Anyone? They didn't do anything about it, but they kept feeding this and fomenting this divide between Jews and Arabs. This all happened all the way to World War II. What happened to the land of Israel, Palestine, in World War II?
After World War II.
During
During World War II. I don't know what happened during World War II.
I think
Nobody talks about it.
Yeah.
So the Mufti of Jerusalem actually got paid a visit by the short Austrian guy named Adolf Hitler. They talked. They met. There was a summit. And the Mufti was like, oh, we are on your side.
Mhm.
We get it, the Jewish problem. And Hitler was like, jawohl. So they came to this agreement that they would work together to destroy the Jews, not just in Europe, but in this Palestine land of Israel. Go ahead.
Oh, I know that Hitler didn't want to start a war, didn't want to fight in
The Middle East.
that particular area,
Muslims.
but he would send them money and he would support them.
He didn't have to fight Muslims. Muslims were on the side.
The Muslim people would meet with them and they would give money. They would get money from Hitler to be able to, fight the Jews where they were.
You would come after them.
He believes they were racially.
Well, Hitler was definitely not a faithful
Hitler
person,
wasn't
friend to
involved.
have.
Yeah, he believed
He
that
never was a
Arabs
nice guy.
were racially inferior, but
But
he didn't want to fight them during World War II because he already had a
They were
three-front war or
Right.
two-front war.
Well, also too, I think his hate for Jews was greater than his hate for the Arabs. And
Oh,
so it's like you sacrifice those that take priority. At least in Hitler's eyes, well, let's get rid of the Jews and then we can work on the Arabs. Because once we get our 1,000-year reign in, we can do whatever we want.
Yeah, Germany.
right?
So November 28th, 1941, Hitler met with the the Mufti of Jerusalem, Amin al-Husseini. And here's that famous picture, if you've seen it, of Hitler and Husseini talking about the Jewish problem, right? And I'm sorry, I wish that our computer worked so I could show you this more clearly, but
Freak is on his head.
there it is.
It's a cat. It's a
There's a fateful meeting. And this sort of sealed the fate of the Jewish people in Palestine, right? So the Jews that were there in Palestine before this meeting were already being oppressed by their Arab neighbors,
Mhm.
fed by the British government. Afterwards, it just became exponentially worse. While that's happening in Europe, it's like a bad story at this point. We know what's happening to our people in Europe, right? During World War II, millions are dying. So thousands are trying to flee to Palestine,
Mhm.
right? And since Palestine was still under control of the British, supposedly, but they essentially relinquished that control to the Muslims, Britain said, no, you cannot go. We're not going to let you in because that'll make our friends, the Arabs, upset. So part of the blood of our people stains the hands of the British.
Mhm.
So many more could have survived if they had just let us into our land, but they didn't want to upset their Muslim friends. So,
I think
go ahead.
before World War II, during the Balfour era, I think before they sicked the Arabs on us, I think there were Jews in Britain who did, Jews in Palestine, Israel, during the Balfour era, who actually fought against British people in order to push out the British. Which,
And they did during
Who
World War
else?
II as well.
I mean,
Yes.
I mean, as American, I 100% support fighting and putting out
Fighting
the
the
British,
British,
pushing out
yeah.
the British.
Yeah, we're
It's a
all
very
for
American
that.
thing to do.
As a
Yes.
Jew, it's like, I mean, they gave you that small poem.
I mean, but they never gave it to us.
Yeah.
No, but what
They
I'm saying,
just gave us a piece of paper saying we'll give it to you, and they never did.
no, what I'm saying is like I understand what I'm not. It's not good what any side did, but what I'm saying is the Jews shouldn't have immediately turned hostile on the British.
You know the Arabs also
Yeah,
fought
but-
British, right?
But
I understand,
To
but
be
I'm
fair,
talking
the
about
British turned on them long before, you know.
No, they didn't. They didn't turn on us until we fought them.
No, the British did because they went
They
to the
were
Muslims
feeding
and
the Muslim
gave them
efforts
money to
murder
fight
us.
against them.
I thought we attacked them first.
No. No,
so
that was the big pogrom on Easter in the early part of the 20th century when the Brits funded and enabled the pogrom against the Jewish people in Jerusalem.
that's why it's called aiding and abetting.
Yeah.
You may not have done the crime yourself, but if you've provided the weapons or provided the money, just like America is guilty of that with Iran, because Biden provided that money and Obama provided the money for them to kill other people. So why that's what that stems from, is because just because they didn't outrightly, kick them out, they paid for their enemies to do that. And so they're just as guilty.
It was a mess. So after World War II, and we need to come to a close here, and you probably may be asking, what kind of Bible study is this? We haven't even looked at the Bible. So we need to establish what happened in history so that we can move forward with the obvious biblical principle of the land still belongs to us forever. So after World War II, what happened to Palestine?
Britain finally gave us that land legally.
Did they?
Well,
Britain
no,
who gave
it was
to us?
Truman who. It was
I love it.
The
Truman.
United Nations.
So the United Nations, after the war, and there are millions of Jewish people had died, right? And there were thousands and thousands of refugees of all types thrown throughout Europe, and the war was devastating everywhere. Then
Truman.
the people who
Right.
were fighting for Zionism, there's a word. Zionism means those who want Israel to live in our promised land. And by Israel, I mean the people of Israel. People of Israel and the land of Israel. These are Zionists. So the Zionists petitioned and said, we got to go somewhere. We're not safe in Europe anymore, obviously. The only place we can go is our land. And the United Nations, newly formed, said, go to Uganda. Look it up, true story. Go to Uganda in Africa. It's lovely. The Africans wouldn't mind having you. If you go to Palestine, the Muslims will kill you. And the Jewish people were like, we just survived World War II. What worse can they do to us than what's already been done to us? And after a huge set of petitions, right, and arguing back and forth, the United Nations finally, in 1947, at the end of the year, said, all right, here's what we'll do. We'll partition this land to the Jews and this land to the Muslims. There'll be a Jewish state and there'll be a Palestinian state. They said that in 1947. However, the land that they partitioned to us was half of what the Balfour Declaration promised us many decades earlier. So Chaim Weizmann, the first president of Israel, said, look, and the United Nations responded, take it or leave it. So Chaim Weizmann said, okay, we'll take it. It's better than nothing. So we moved, we immigrated, we finally started to settle the land. And in May of 14th, 1948 is the birthday of the modern day nation of Israel, right? What happened on May 14th, 1948?
We got attacked.
We got attacked by whom?
The Muslims.
Everybody. Everyone attacked us. The Syrians, the Jordanians, which was a relatively new nation, by the way, inhabiting the land that was promised to us in the Balfour Declaration.
Yeah.
The Egyptians, name it.
And then we ended up taking the land that we actually were promised in the Belfort.
No,
Accords.
the
When did
olive
we
day,
get that?
olive day modern Jordan was in the Balfour Declaration. We have never had that.
Oh.
Yeah. So they attacked us and it began, right? This thing. So Jews that had come in were called Jews or Hebrews or Israel. And the Arabs that had been living there for a few centuries chose the name for themselves, what?
Palestine.
When was that name used to identify the people who had lived there for centuries as Palestinians?
That was Arafat.
So
I
it was
think
the
Arafat
1960s.
did that. Yeah.
The 1960s. Arafat said, we need to unite. And if you don't know who Arafat was, look him up. Good times. It'll be good reading. Arafat said, okay, we're now not just Muslim fighters and Arabs. We are Palestinians. And we need a flag. And we need a nation. Blah, 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 blah. Right? Before that, they were just oppressed Arabs that were being so terribly oppressed, they said, by the Jewish people in Israel. Why didn't, when we reestablished the land according to UN edict in 1948, why didn't these Arabs flee?
They couldn't. None of their countries wanted them back.
Okay, that's true. Say again, Joshua.
No, yeah, that was basically right.
And they were being
Yeah.
used as pawns from their countries to say how oppressive Israel is
Yeah.
by not letting them stay in the land. And they're now refugees when, in fact, Israel said, you can come and live amongst us, be part of us, be part of the new nation.
Yep.
And they refused. It wasn't Israel.
So the Palestinian people, quote unquote, and again, they weren't called that till the 60s. The Arabs who lived there were told by the Muslim governments of the surrounding nations that the Jews will come in to kill you. They will kill your children. They will behead your babies. These evil Jews, you need to run. You need to run now. So they did, because they believed these leaders, and they ran toward Egypt and Jordan and Lebanon and Syria, and all the borders were closed. So they sat there and they accumulated there and they camped there. And these became the famous Palestinian refugee camps that we hear about today. And so the Jewish people were like, don't go. You could be citizens. We can figure this out. And when they left anyway, so what happened to all the homes and land that was abandoned by the Palestinians?
Taken over by the Israel.
Israel took it. I was like,
Sure.
if you're not going to come back, we're not going to let the land lie fallow. We're not going to let your houses fall over and just become a rotting hulk, which is what the Ottoman Empire did to the land for so many centuries.
Like a ghost town.
We'll take it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that has led to the modern Palestinian refugee crisis. I always put Palestinian in quotes because this is an invented identity. It's an invented nation to try to use as a political ploy against Israel. That takes us up to the modern time, right? And we had the 48 war, right? And the 56 war, and the 67 war, and the 73 war. And we had the Intifada of the 80s. And it's just fed and fed and fed. And Palestinian kids have been taught for decades now that the only good Jew is a dead Jew.
Mm-hmm.
And that you need to die as a martyr for Allah. It doesn't matter how old you are. And you need to do all you can to kill those who have taken our land. How is it their land?
Not their land.
It's not going to be their land.
Number one, God gave it to us. Number two, historically, their ancestors lived there for 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, and they never did anything with it. It was poverty and oppression. And number three, when we were given the UN partition, we invited them to live with us as equal citizens, and they would not. Someone please tell me how this land belongs to the Palestinians?
I mean,
Well, it never
gave to us
did.
fair and square, so-
It never
Say again?
UN gave to us fair and square. So.
Well,
Yes.
even
That's
the,
mentioned for King
you know-
Israel has been there thousands of years ago.
We don't want to talk. That was a Christian state.
Yes.
but all the
They
nations.
stole it.
Look at the kingdom. It was a-
Yeah, well,
See,
Solomon,
well, I think you're right because, well,
That was like-
they never actually-
we can only do one at a time, y'all. So, yes, go ahead.
the only time they've ever gotten Israel, and the only reason why they ever wanted Israel was because the Jewish people were interested in it or lived in it, or that
Yeah, before,
there
before
was-
this
yeah.
1948 thing, they didn't take care of the land.
No.
They oppressed the Jewish people that were there, the few of us that were, slaughtered, killed, pogroms all the time, stole our money, burned down our houses. When we tried to redress our grievances, even to the British authorities, the Brits would turn the other way.
see,
So,
I think they have a great responsibility in what is going on
Who's
today. British,
oh, yeah,
because
I
they
agree.
had an opportunity to say, hey,
Okay.
this is the
So-
land of Israel. This is God's land.
Yeah.
Let's give it back to the people it belonged to.
That is a super brief history of the history of Israel from the first century AD to the modern age. And just letting you in a little bit of the dynamics about that. There are a lot of resources historically. that are available to you. You can read, and some of them are, pretty unbiased, and others are grossly biased, right? But the reality is the land is ours. It's always been ours since God gave it to Abraham through the covenant and Isaac and Jacob in the Torah. We have not always been on it. We have been faithless. We've been a stiff-necked and stubborn people. We have not taken care of the land God has given us, but God has remained faithful, and he still returned us to the land in 1948. So we will continue this next week, now looking at this perspective, since we know our history, through the lens of Scripture, and see where do we go from here. Last thoughts? 30 seconds or less?
No.
None? Okay. That being the case, thank you guys for your attention. Thank you for your patience. Thank you as well for your spending time with us today. As always, please pray for the hostages, pray for the Palestinians, pray for the Israelis, pray for the Jewish people, pray for the peace of Jerusalem and the salvation of everybody, including the Jewish people. Shalom.
Amen.
Bye.
Bye.